But while making weapons, did the Israelites also discover a super science that would allow objects to levitate? The Ark of the Covenant containing the 10 Commandments of God was said to have been able to fly. Can modern research show that this was scientifically possible?
Well, now the Ark is really levitating, hovering freely in the air.
The most powerful religious object in the ancient world was the Ark of the Covenant.
We call it the Mysterium e Tremendum. It is this tremendous mystery of divine power, all concentrated within a small architectural device.
It was said to be able to levitate, to bear its own weight in thin air.
It was there, moving by itself, supporting those who were carrying it.
Was this a demonstration of divine power, or is there another explanation? Could the levitation have been achieved by lost technologies, technologies that are only now being rediscovered?
Believers believe that God can do anything, and especially when it comes to the Holy Ark, which houses the 10 Commandments given by God to Moses on Mount Sinai.
The Ark is mentioned in the Bible, the Quran, and the Hebrew Torah. But the most mysterious story is that of Uzzah.
We know from the first book of Samuel how in the days of King David the time had come for the ark to come back home to Jerusalem. Oxen were pulling a wagon on which the ark was resting. Uzzah noticed that the oxen started to fall to the ground. He feared instinctively that the ark could fall, and so he put out his hand to steady the ark, and as soon as he did that, he dropped down dead. Why? Actually, the ark didn't need an Uzzah or anybody else to steady it.
God said to him, Uzzah, it bears those that carry it. Can it not certainly bear itself?
God was powering that ark forward. Yes, it was levitating through the air, with that power coming from God.
But can science offer an alternative theory? Modern scientists have uncovered a set of materials with surprising properties. They're called superconductors and could explain the miracle of levitation.
Superconductivity is one of the great frontiers in physics.
Superconductor expert Professor Tom Johansen at the University of Oslo in Norway is investigating the phenomenon of levitation by a superconductor.
I have a magnet here. And if this is in the vicinity of the superconductor, when I cool the superconductor, what is going to happen is that the superconductor recognizes that there is a magnetic field surrounding it, and it's going to react on that.
The unique properties of a superconductor create an effect called stable levitation, but they only work under very specific conditions.
There are many materials which are superconducting by itself. For instance, aluminum, lead, many elements are superconducting.
The materials used to make superconductors were common in the ancient world.
But you have to cool them far down in order to get those properties.
Elements will only superconduct below a critical temperature. To raise this critical temperature, metals are combined into alloys.
I have here a piece of yttrium barium copper oxide, and this material has to be cooled below 91 Kelvin in order to get into the superconducting state. But this you can achieve very simply by pouring in liquid nitrogen.
91 Kelvin is equivalent to minus 296 degrees Fahrenheit.
I can take the magnet and bring it closer, but if I now put my hand back, it will stay in the air. Magnetic levitation by superconductivity.
But how can the magnet withstand the force of gravity? 3D specialist James Dean uses technology specially designed for ancient discoveries to investigate.
When a superconductor is cooled below its critical point, the way in which electricity flows within it changes. If we take this superconductor and we place it in the presence of a magnetic field, we can see that the field lines of the magnet are inducing a flow of electric charge within the superconductor.
These currents form tornadoes of charge called vortices, with the magnetic field passing through their core.
If we zoom in and take a closer look, you can see that the vortices of current that the magnetic field has induced are passing through any little tiny defects they can find in the superconductor.
These defects pin the vortices and therefore the magnetic field in place.
If we move the magnet, we're moving the magnetic field with it, which means that the vortices are being dragged away from their pinned locations. So they're resisting this movement, and if we push it and pull it, we can see that it's trying to pop back into place. In fact, we'll find that any force which tries to move the magnet, and thus the magnetic field, will be met by an opposing force, which tries to return it to the same location.
This is the key to stable levitation. The pinning of the magnetic field opposes the force of gravity.
So the magnet is locked in place because its magnetic field is locked in place, and it levitates above the superconductor.
If the superconductor is moved, the levitating magnet will follow it, travelling at the same height along a plane. So the magnet not only levitates, it can also be moved through the air. But could the ancient Israelites have mastered such a science more than 3,000 years ago?
Quite often when we look at ancient technology, we're amazed at the craftsmanship and the skill that goes into the production of objects.
This was an age of highly sophisticated metallurgy. War across the Middle East was fueling the fires of advancement. Smelting processes were being improved to produce better alloys for weapons. While making these alloys, could the ancient Israelites have discovered this super science? If so, it would not be the first lost technology puzzling historians.
Quite recently we were looking at Bronze Age spearheads, and they're amazingly fine castings, and we were trying to find a modern foundry that could replicate these. They all had great problems in achieving anything near the quality that the ancient metalworkers could do.
Could the Ark of the Covenant have been levitated by a lost technology? Ancient Discoveries puts this to the test with a model of the Ark that will push stable levitation to its limits.
To levitate this Ark is quite a challenge because it is a large object and it's heavy, and that I've never done before. At the bottom plate I have attached 4 very strong magnets which are going to interact with the superconductors that you are seeing here, and I have put the spacer in between so I have a gap between the Ark and the superconductor when I will cool them down.
Tom pours in liquid nitrogen to cool the superconductor to minus 320 degrees Fahrenheit. For the experiment to be successful, the 4 supporting blocks must be removed one by one until the Ark is hovering above the superconductors.
Well, now the Ark is really levitating about 50 millimeters above the superconductor, hovering freely in the air. If I touch it and try to push it to the side, it will oscillate by 2 or 3 millimeters. If I really press my hand, I'm now pushing with a big force, and it's almost not moving down there. It could take much more weight.
We've shown superconductors can cause our Ark to levitate. But could the ancients really have discovered this 3,000 years ago?
The physics of magnetic levitation with superconductors is, of course, part of the laws of nature, and this has been like this forever. The discovery of superconductivity was totally accidental. It happens by accident even today.
But there remains a problem. How could the ancients have chilled the superconductors to temperatures hundreds of degrees below zero? It's possible they didn't need to. They could have discovered materials that superconduct at room temperature.
There is no fundamental physical principle which prevents room temperature superconductivity. It could be that people have not found this material, but we cannot say today that it's impossible.
God works in different ways. And sometimes you can have an extraordinary feat from heaven. Sometimes you have something which is within the laws of nature which takes place. Both come from God. The fact that the Ark could move by itself is a testament to the greatness of God.
It is not magic, but it's very fascinating physics.
Modern science often helps to substantiate details and facts that are in the Bible. There are details within modern science which are incompatible with the biblical account of events, but often, actually, modern science can be an aid to strengthen our faith and to substantiate what's in the Bible.